He thought rapport could beat the law. I stacked receipts, and one missed deadline turned his career into a cautionary tale the board noticed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a story. There is a line an old trial dog gave me when I was a summer clerk. A lawyer owes 3 duties. First to himself, second to the court, and last, dead last, to the client. He smelled of stale coffee and paper dust. Tie loosened, voice rasped thin from years of objections. I remember the fluorescent hum, the copier's sweet hot ozone, my own pen tapping like a metronome against legal pad lines. Always protect yourself, he added, leaning so close I could see the nick on his jaw and the pale scar near his ear. Clients smile while they grease the wheels on the bus they plan to shove you under. They need us, I said, still bright enough to believe good work was armor. He exhaled smoke that wasn't there and shook his head, a tired metronome. Time proved him cruelly right. Years later, calluses where idealism used to live, one particular client tried to load me onto the axles. I can still catalog the textures. Burned coffee in the lobby, elevator cables humming, a file's grit under my thumb, rain ticking at the window like a clock nobody could slow. It began with a fire's sour aftersmell clinging to photographs, an adjuster who sounded friendly over the phone, and a company man who believed charm beats deadlines. We have a great rapport, he bragged. Rapport doesn't toll statutes, I answered, already tasting iron where dread and foresight mix. He smirked like experience and expertise were synonyms. That was the moment a red countdown lit up behind my eyes. Merciless, audible if you stood close enough. I told myself I could steer him. I was wrong, and the proof would arrive like weather. By 40, I ran a downtown practice that never slept. Elevators breathing steel, hallways echoing with shoes and hurry, the lobby smelling faintly of marble dust and burnt espresso. My roster was executives and outfits that looked sturdy until the wind hit. I drafted deals by day and bailed people out of their own confidence by night. Then came a mid-market company with assets stretched across projects and a smoking crater where a warehouse had stood. Insurance should have been the bridge. Instead, they handed the crossing to Frank. Late 50s, polished shoes, permanent squint, the kind who calls lawyers glorified clerks and means it. Why pay you to read? He scoffed, tapping a stack of forms like scripture. He preened about his rapport with the adjuster, about friendly calls, about how business is relationships. The burned smell still clung to the file. Ash smudged the edges. A warped doorknob rattled in a plastic bag of evidence on my desk. Frank, I said, keeping my tone calm, the carrier is not your friend, the policy is. He smiled the way men do when they think years equal wisdom. Behind his grin, I could already see an empty calendar square and a statute that does not care about cocktails, charm, or golf. He walked me through his strategy with a grin. Make nice, trade jokes, let the adjuster feel respected, and the check would waltz in. Business is relationships, he said, patting my shoulder as if I were furniture. Business is receipts, I said, sliding a copy of the policy across the table. Outside, sirens dopplered through dusk. Inside, the air tasted of copier heat and old carpet. I asked for authority to file. He waved me off. No need, he said. We're aligned. Aligned with what, I wondered, the clock? The cliff? I spelled it out with the gentleness of a hammer. They will stall, then deny. If you are not in court before the limitation, there is no leverage left. Emails went out. Firm, dated, attached checklists. Voicemails landed with the little chirp that makes bad news sound polite. Relax, he wrote back. I have this. Relax is the lullaby sung right before impact. He kept me an arm's length away, copying me on nothing, inviting me to nothing, talking about costs like pennies mattered more than millions. In meetings, he beamed about lunches with the adjuster. In the hall, he waved me off with a chuckle that smelled like aftershave and arrogance. Meanwhile, I could feel the clock in my molars. The file's metal clip bit my palm. I walked the timeline on a legal pad, drew boxes, underlined dates until the ink bled. Finally, I sent one more message in black and white. File, or authorize me to file. If not me, someone. Once the date passes, the door locks. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a useless promise. Next week. The calendar flipped. Fluorescent lights hummed. The air in my office thinned as if the building itself could count. I called his office and got the thin, sugary voice of an assistant who had learned to triage. He's in a meeting, she sang. Tell him the statute isn't. I printed a timeline the size of a placemat and taped it above my desk so its edges brushed my knuckles when I reached for the phone. At night, the office air went cool and papery. The soda machine clicked. I could hear my own breath slowing as I chose measured words over anger. Frank, I typed. I am trying to save you from yourself. My cursor blinked like a tiny metronome, counting out the beats until someone would have to take responsibility. Something was going to break, and it would not be the policy language. Then trial swallowed me whole. 2 weeks of stale sandwiches and courtroom heat. Linen scratching my neck, voices rising and falling like surf under the judge's steady metronome. Each morning I knotted my tie and glanced at the red circle on my wall calendar. The day the claim had to be born or die. I called Frank between witness preps. I sent a summary email before openings. I left a message at midnight with the hum of the vending machine in the background. You must sue this week. If you won't retain me, retain anyone? I said, my whisper fogging the glass of a dark conference room. No reply. In my bag, the fire file rode under transcripts. In my head, the timer got louder. On the eve of the deadline, I typed the plainest warning of my career. Miss this and the insurer owes you nothing. I hit send and watched the little paper plane fly across the screen. It felt like tossing a flare from a sinking boat. During a recess, I stood in the corridor under a humming exit sign and dialed again. Voicemail. I stared at my reflection in the black glass of a darkened conference room. Tie slightly crooked, eyes rimmed red, and said to the empty room, file the suit. The carpet smelled like dust and lemon. The air tasted stale. Back at counsel table, my opposing counsel whispered, you look pale. Deadlines, I said, and the words stuck to my tongue like aspirin. When court adjourned, I jogged to the elevator, thumb already over my phone, and found exactly nothing. The timer thundered so loud in my head I was sure the bailiff could hear it. The deadline came like a door slamming in another room. I was mid-argument, reading a witness with my periphery, when the invisible latch clicked. After court, I checked my phone. Nothing from Frank, nothing from anyone. For a foolish minute, I let hope visit. Maybe the carrier had paid, maybe persuasion had worked. Hope left fingerprints, but no forwarding address. Days stacked like folders, heavy with paper and the sweet dust smell of toner. My trial closed with a verdict and a headache that hummed. I unlocked my office, breathed paper and dust, and stared at the calendar scar where the red circle used to be. Still no email. Still no call. Silence can mean victory, yes, but more often it means someone is building a story. I straightened the file, capped my pen, and listened to the hall settle for night. The soft click of lights, the elevator sigh, the distant hiss of rain on stone. The receptionist left a pink slip on my blotter. Frank called, with a question mark that felt like a smirk. I turned it face down and stared at the window where rain made commas down the glass. I brewed terrible coffee that tasted like burned pennies and let it go cold while I drafted phrases I hoped not to need. As previously advised, despite repeated warnings, the words stacked like sandbags. In the hall, the janitor's cart squeaked. Somewhere a door thudded softly. The building settled on its haunches. My phone lit the desk a soft hospital blue. Call me. I told the screen, not because I wanted to talk, but because I wanted the record. When it finally buzzed, I knew I would answer on the first ring, and I knew I would already have the file open. He called at 9:17 p.m., voice already pitched to outrun facts. You were supposed to handle this, Frank said, skipping hello. I pulled the file close and let the pen sit ready. Handle what you refused to authorize? I asked. He talked fast, stepping on his own sentences, building a story while the ink on it was still wet. I've got rapport. They'll pay. You lawyers always overcomplicate. Then a new key. If this goes bad, it's on you. I watched rain make commas down the window and said, Frank, for the record, I warned you in writing on April 3rd, April 18th, May 1st, May 29th, and June 5th. I asked for written authority to file. You said no. Silence hiccuped. Send me proof, he snapped. Happily. I opened a new email. Subject, timeline and prior authorizations. Warehouse claim. I pasted the dates, attached PDFs of every letter, and dropped in the certified mail receipts with tracking numbers that looked like barcodes on a verdict. At the bottom, I added one line the old trial dog had taught me. Please confirm receipt. I hit send, printed the email to PDF, and saved it to a folder named after. My phone buzzed 1 minute later with a reply that could have been typed with teeth. You're fired. I screenshotted the message, filed a disengagement letter I had drafted for exactly this moment, and addressed it to his board and to outside counsel of record. In the quiet after, Copier heat hung in the air and my heart slowed to a work pace. Somewhere down the hall, the janitor's cart squeaked. I capped my pen and waited for the next shoe. It landed on LinkedIn at breakfast. A post in Frank's voice that read like a legal Mad Lib. Our insurer played games. Our lawyer missed a filing. We're pursuing remedies. A screenshot shimmered into my group chat, then another, then a reporter's email blinking press inquiry in the subject line like a flare. I didn't answer the reporter. I opened my engagement letter instead, scrolled to the clause every solo learns by heart, no action without written authorization, and to the page that describes what happens when a client's public statements invite a response. I wrote to Frank's board chair and their general counsel. In light of public assertions, I am permitted to disclose limited information necessary to defend my conduct. See attached. I stapled my comm to the email and attached the stack. Engagement letter. Timeline with warning dates. Read receipts. Certified mail numbers. My final request for authority. His thumbs up, next week. I CC'd my malpractice carrier with a short note. No claim asserted. Insured puts carrier on notice and encloses file. And felt the floor under me harden. 10 minutes later GC wrote back. We'll need a call at 2 p.m. Please hold the hour. I looped in a court reporter to attend and transcribe. I've learned memories improve when a stenotype is present. Frank posted again, doubling down, hashtagging integrity like a man waving a rented flag. I closed the tab and checked the clock. Rain thinned to mist on the glass. The building's HVAC exhaled like a tired animal. I stacked the exhibits in chronological order and laid a blue pen across the top for the clean lines it makes when a lie hits paper. My phone pulsed once with a text from a friend. You okay? I typed back, receipts, and turned on the conference room lights. At 2 o'clock, the board appeared in squares. The chair's backdrop was a bookshelf that actually held books. The GC wore the expression of someone who has balanced other people's mess on a calendar before. Frank joined late from a car, camera wobbling, smile already oiled. The court reporter's fingers hovered above the keys like a promise. Let's be clear, GC began. This meeting is privileged. Mr. My name, you may respond to the post. I shared my screen. Subject lines marching. Dates stacked like fence posts. PDFs opening with that crisp little sound. I read each warning out loud. Then the ask for written authority. Then next week. Was suit filed before the deadline? The chair asked. Not by me, I said. I was never authorized. By anyone? Records show no filing. Frank leaned in, camera up his nose. This is theatrics, he said. Adjusters respect me. Deals get done. Does respect toll limitations? The chair asked, eyes flat. He pivoted. Our counsel should have protected us. I scrolled to the clause bearing his initials. Client directs litigation. Counsel requires written authority to file. Client declined. I watched the board read the line that might as well have been chiseled in the contract. GC asked, Did you send the certified letter? I opened the USPS page. The tracking lit green. Delivered. Signed. The reporter's keys whispered the word delivered into the transcript. Silence moved across squares like shade across a field. The chair cleared his throat. Mr. My name, do you have any remaining conflicts with the company? Only with Mr. Surname, I said. And only to the extent he continues to defame me. I will not represent you adverse to him, but I will provide your new counsel my entire file. The chair nodded once, the old kind of nod men used to end arguments. Thank you. Mr. Surname, we'll speak offline. The screen went still. The recording light blinked off. I sat in a quiet room that smelled like lemon wipes and paper and felt the temperature change. The next 48 hours unfolded like a syllabus. The insurer sent a denial letter that used small words sharpened to points. Untimely, prejudice, closed. The bank, CC'd on everything, reassessed exposure and paused a line of credit that kept 2 projects moving. Paused as banker for no. Vendors who had accepted easy terms suddenly preferred COD. A controller wrote me privately, he wouldn't let us call you. We saved your letters. The board called an emergency meeting. By morning Frank was transitioned, which is HR for fired. He tried one last desperate alchemy, emailed me, subject line urgent, proposing that I draft a suit as if timely and we can backdate. I forwarded the note to GC without comment. A minute later GC replied, We've got it. Another email arrived from a local business journal asking for a quote on allegations of malpractice. I sent none. I don't feed small fires until they become large lawsuits. Instead I filed a short, dry grievance to the platform where he'd smeared me. The post disappeared within the hour like spilled sugar under a damp cloth. That afternoon, the board's new outside counsel asked for my full file and permission to quote from the timeline if needed. I gave it. The only audience I wanted was the one with vote and purse strings. Late in the day, an adjuster, yes, that adjuster, sent a private note that read like a confession. Off the record, your letters were clear. He said he'd handle it. I can't move a closed clock. I printed it not because it helped, but because the ink felt like closure. When I left that night, the elevator hummed a lower, kinder tone. The rain had finally quit. Streetlights threw the kind of honest light that makes even bad corners look straightforward. My phone stayed on quiet. I let it. A week later, the company rehired my firm, bounded by new walls. I would not touch the crater claim. Conflict is a real word. But I could help with cleanup. Vendor workouts, landlord talks, the zoning issue no one had wanted to learn when money was easy. In the first meeting without Frank, the conference room felt larger. People breathed at their normal heights. We can still survive, the chair said, sliding a list across. Decisions no longer outsourced to charm. We'll do the boring thing well, I said, surprising myself with the echo of a younger me. Afterward, I walked past the framed diplomas and stopped at the window where the city looked like a map you could fold back to sanity. My inbox pinged with a notice from my carrier. Matter closed. No action. I filed it with the disengagement letter and the transcript, then reopened my oldest email from the trial dog and read the line he had written to me the week I passed the bar. First to yourself, second to the court, last to the client, because you cannot serve the second or the third if you've lit the first on fire. That sentence had felt cynical at 25. Felt like oxygen now. On my way out, a junior associate asked how it was going. Receipts, I said, and calendars. She smiled like I had told her a secret. I suppose I had. At home, the apartment smelled like rain baking off brick. I set my phone on the counter, poured coffee, and let silence catch up. Somewhere downtown, a copier cooled and a board practiced new habits. Somewhere else, a man refreshed a page and waited for applause that would not come. The clock over the stove clicked loud and honest. I wrote the old line on a yellow sticky and tucked it inside my briefcase where my hand would find it before anyone else did. Sometimes the smartest revenge is professional. Clear warnings, clean files, and a door you don't let a liar drag you through. What would you have done? Keep chasing a charming client into a fire, or stack receipts and let the fall happen? Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next story.